Release the Parish Ordinance Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Ms. Lauren, would you call the roll?
Mr. Harris?
I'm here.
Mr. Talbert?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Girlingham?
Here. Everybody in the building, please silence your phone.
Do you have to turn
You
the
in the
game
back,
off?
you in the front. All right, new business, review discussions and recommendations of ordinances. A, discussion of proposed section, chapter 125, slab survey. Mr. Talbert, I'm assuming.
Actually, this is an item put forth by Gravity One. Is it put forth by Gravity One? So we've got Mr. CFM Jamie Seal from representing Quality Engineering and Gravity One talking about A and B, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
Floor is yours, Mr. Sipp.
Great. Yeah, Drainage District 1 is meeting tonight, and they've got their audit to review, so I know you would love to join them there, but they sent me
Yeah,
here to
that'd
help
be
you all. So we're asking for two additional items that have kind of come up recently with developments. One is asking that within Drainage District 1's boundaries, that a slab survey be required for all development within named subdivisions. What we're finding or coming across is whenever the property owner or whenever a home is being staked out, that sometimes the house is being positioned in different areas than what was originally called for in the plans. So a way to capture that and understand where properties can be located within the setbacks and offsets that are already defined on the plat for the property is to ensure that there's some type of survey that's required prior to a permit being issued. So that's what we're asking for. This came to light with the development within the city limits of Denham Springs, where a foundation is actually being poured right along the setback line, which is going to cause issues for the drainage district whenever they go into sort of mowing or maintaining the channel. They're not going to be able to get their equipment into the channel to be able to cut it, which is going to increase the cost of them providing the services to citizens, cutting the ditch, maintaining the ditch, and things along those lines. So
This isn't done already?
No. So Jamie, let me ask you a question. So if they're building the slab, they're pouring the slab, and the slab is not crossing the setback, but is abutting the setback, they technically, a survey would identify that, but would not stop them from building it if they're within the setback.
it wouldn't. It would just bring the light to the location of where the house is.
Okay, so my question is, I guess the question is twofold. You're an engineering firm, y'all have y'all have a surveying division. What would that cost? What would that add to the cost of construction? For a certified slab survey based on, so what we're talking about is we're gonna go out and form the slab, which we gotta have a permit before we can form it. So, I mean, you can't survey where it's gonna be until it's put up.
Correct. Typically, these things are going to be done as part of what's called a builder's package, and those usually run anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. They're really low-end cost products that are offered to these developers that develop these subdivisions as part of the original package. It's, every firm's different, so I can't speak for everybody, but for us, I know it's usually a low-end cost item. It's kind of a pain overall, but at the same time, it really provides a lot of information.
But it's a service that you provide your developer so that you can do the engineering. Okay, so
It's typical because a lot of the information, like your final certificate of elevation gets done in that builder's package quote. Your preliminary elevation certificate is provided, so your permit officials receive that information in order to issue the permit in the first place. So this is just one component that's not really offered.
So most of the work's already done,
A lot of the information's
it's already provided.
but I guess my concern
Is it
though.
gonna fix the problem?
Well, no, my concern is the timing. I mean, it's a timing thing. I mean, ultimately, when a set of plans is submitted to the permit department, the slab theoretically is staked out on a plot map already. So part of the original submission would be, you know, a set of plans for the house, and then a plat with the house, you know,
We don't receive any drawings showing where.
I understand, but that would come under the review in the permitting department. Once that was approved, the permit would be issued.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, so if they do a survey before the slab's actually staked out, that doesn't necessarily mean that the slab actually ends up where the survey says the slab. So in essence, the survey would need to be done after the slab was formed, yet before it was poured.
Well, it would be similar to just like any of the other infrastructure that's done. Obviously, whenever they go out and stake out construction for a site, they show where they can build, what can't be built, things along those lines.
Well, I mean, I guess my thing is just from a practical point of view, you know, building houses for years, it just seems to me I mean, Bubba, you know, it's like a timing issue. Basically, that you'll be out there forming a slab, you know, you'll form the stuff up there, then you'll have the plumber come in and do the rough end, and then you have a crew come out there to make sure the footings are dug properly, and that the sand is put in, the termite guy comes and sprays, you're putting wire, and I mean, you're putting, you know, a vapor barrier, which is typically visqueen, and wire in, and then you're trying to get it poured. You know, so in essence, at some point in time, we're adding a survey into it, and I don't know, it sounds like you want the results of the survey to be established, you know, to be reviewed before it can be poured, and so consequently, you could have a rain event, which would require redoing a bunch of work that's already been done. So I'm just wondering, you know, I'm not against it, I'm just wondering about the timing of it, and
So typically, as part of a foundation pour, they already have to complete an inspection prior to this, before a foundation is ever poured, because they have to go out and do the inspection for the building codes and things along those lines. So there's already that delay already built into the review process before construction can actually happen. So I think it's very reasonable that this would be done in that same timeline, and usually, especially in our firm, construction stakeout is first order of the day. That gets done before anything else. So a survey crew would normally hit anything that's construction stakeout, and then they would move on to other services.
Okay, so if you remember, I don't know if maybe the council remembers, when we talked about the setback, remember we went from the 5 foot to the 6 foot and 7 foot setback to adjust for the eaves, and we had some builders come speak to us with respect to timing, delays, and those kind of things. I'm just talking about, you know, and basically, the permitting department also was, what we had originally talked about was the permitting department, you know, basically determining the distance from the, you know, from the property line or the setback, and make sure everything was within. And they don't want any part of that, because in essence, those lines on the lots aren't, you know, they might be a stake at some point in time initially, but over the course of construction, those things disappear. So they you know, so what the builder wanted was that they would certify as part of the process that they were, you know, 6 foot or 7 foot. So I'm just wondering if there's some situation in this deal that I mean, I would rather give the Gravity District an inspection situation where they came out and inspected the slab along with, you know, before being poured, along with the permitting department. But in essence, they've got to have a guy dedicated to do that, because when somebody calls, it's not like, oh, we can get to that 2 days later. We're going to pour the slab tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? You need to come on out here in the morning and do it, or.
And so this information is gathered prior to y'all, the contractor coming in and pulling the permit to pour it all.
Okay. So what you're telling me is that you want a certified survey to go to the permitting instead of a house drawn on a plan.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, that seems to be more reasonable, but in essence, that
And
doesn't
these things are usually delivered.
guarantee it gets built at that point, at that point.
Well, nothing does.
Right, and
Before
so-
they're being built. I
but
mean,
then that-
you
then
might
that
could do a waiver for someone who's 150 feet from, what they present is 50 feet from any, from the boundary. I don't imagine a world where it winds up within the 6 feet.
Because what it say in the name subdivision, that's every subdivision of
Yeah,
property.
but is it also someone who buys an individual piece of land? They buy an acre of land?
If they buy
clear
it in such and such acres, yeah.
I mean,
Right.
remember, we talked about name subdivision.
I know.
We get
And that's
into-
something that can be changed. That's something we didn't know what would be appropriate for.
How you would call it, what you
Exactly.
would say, yeah.
Start off with it, according to our ordinance, it would look like it would be addressed within servitude in subdivisions with or without improvements, with how you would initially address that. Because sometimes minor resubs, a lot of the stuff that we call subdivisions are really minor
Minor
resubs,
resubs,
so in
yeah.
essence, it might not apply to them. But some of those could
Still have drainage.
have drainage
sometimes,
servitudes in
yeah.
it. So I think I'm not sure we need to identify subdivisions. I think we need to identify plots of land that have drainage servitudes abutting them. And then you've got to, I mean, if you're gonna look at it, you need to if you have a drainage servitude crossing your property, then you need to somehow certify that you're not encroaching up in that drainage servitude. I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. So, I mean, even though the problem seems to occur mostly in these subdivisions that the lots are shrinking because the cost of development's going up and we're trying to squeeze pipes in between houses but ultimately, this really, if you're gonna do a slab survey, it should affect or every construction permit, be it residential, commercial, whatever, that has a drainage servitude
Yeah.
within that piece of property. And then all drainage servitudes are protected.
Well, but then you're
We're-
really only
we're-
talking about addressing ones that, not necessarily just like the drainage in front of your house. You're talking about a major tributary like a cut through or,
Well, I
you know,
mean, but
in which case,
Well, and some of these things may get mixed up with the second ordinance. that we're
Right.
asking.
well, I mean, I know,
Well, and-
but ultimately, Jamie, it could, I mean, if I've got a 6-acre tract of land and it was cut out on a minor resub, this is really not what you're talking about.
Correct.
But it could have, that 6-acre tract of land could have butt Beaver Creek, or could have butt Harrison Lateral, or could have butt,
Yeah.
what's the big?
Grace Creek?
Grace Creek. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And
And
so
in any redevelopment, we're able to require that they identify the servitudes or record the servitudes whenever they provide that preliminary plat as part of the sale, the transaction, or anything.
so why don't, if you wanted to do something like this, you would say, or like if it butts to, I don't know, like Beaver Creek, or if you have a major canal that the drainage district is in charge of maintaining,
Actively
why don't you
maintaining.
just have them, require them to come out and measure it at that time?
Because it's in addition to just named tributaries along the larger Beaver Creeks.
Yeah, just some
things like
laterals,
that.
yeah,
Any
yeah.
lateral
affects
within.
drainage servitudes in subdivisions that are subsurface, or,
Anything.
you know, whether it be a
Like
swell,
rear yard-
whether it be a
rear yard
swell
ditches.
ditch or
But
subsurface.
I mean,
So if it's
should
not
it? I mean,
gonna
who's gonna
cure the
build their house on
issue
the
of
ditch?
building
Oh my
too
God.
close to the
You don't- You don't
subsurface,
even understand. I mean, and then,
It's gonna allow us to know where the maintenance issues are going to be in the future and help with budgeting.
Plan
It's
for it,
also
okay.
maintenance costs.
yeah.
If the district has to go in and because they built a house right up to
We
the
need it
servitude,
instead of,
and now all of a sudden they have to send a weed eating crew out there as opposed to running a boom mower, then that changes the operating cost of the drainage district.
so ultimately, who you want to do this inspection?
I mean, from
Receiving the-
Jamie's point of view, I understand what he's saying is that if a slab survey is something that needs to be put on paper, then it could be part of the construction package. And ultimately, most individuals that are building a house usually have an engineering firm come set the corners, you know, at which they pull their slab off of. So in essence, when they go set the corners, they could then, in theory, based on where the corners are set, take GPS readings and generate a slab survey fairly easily.
So it wouldn't cost a whole lot.
So it wouldn't be an
Few
expensive
minutes,
deal.
maybe an hour.
The issue is when are they gonna do that? Are they gonna do, I mean, it really can't do it before the permit process, because ultimately, nobody's setting their corners before they get their permit approved, in case there's some problem.
Their
So,
permit, their
But
corners are
ultimately-
set whenever the final plat's approved, or prior to the plat being approved.
Well, when they form a slab, even if it's like in a new development neighborhood, does someone come out and inspect that before it gets?
oh yeah, so let's say,
So just, they can, you're saying you want them to kind of look at it then?
well, I think it's a, I mean, I don't have a serious problem with it. I'm just wondering,
Is there a better
well,
way to?
I'm just wondering, I mean, we're identifying, in this particular thing, we talk about single-family residential uses and then other uses. And I'm not sure that,
The other uses, we're asking, the reason that's in there, the language in that, is mostly for storage facilities, buildings, things along those lines, additional structures built on an individual
so
property.
you're not, if I'm building a 5,000 square foot commercial building, you're not looking for a slab survey on it, even though I could encroach right up to the setback in it. But
On a commercial site?
Huh?
On a commercial site?
Yeah.
That's not what this is.
So
only
this is
intended to
only
be
addressing residential homes within
'Cause that's where we're finding most of the issues.
typically engineered subdivision. I mean, what we're really
Yeah,
trying to look
yeah.
at is
Engineered
engineered
subdivision.
subdivision.
That's why it says subdivision, name
Subdivision, engineered subdivision, whatever
So-
that terminology is that matches
Well,
what the
you've
parents
been here at
want.
meetings when we discussed that those name subdivision things is every division down Highway 16, every division down 1019.
So-
They had to name it to divide.
They got one, Shadow Springs, I'm gonna call it out by
In
name,
the backyard, I know.
but they got pipes that the drainage district
They
can't
popped out
even
of
get to there and change them out.
Yep.
There are pipes that go in different directions. and
Right.
They started and stopped construction during the development.
And never
Well, I mean,
finished.
so, right now, is there an inspection being done?
Yeah, Kevin and them go out and they inspect the site. They make sure it's 6 feet or
Foundation
7 feet, huh?
The foundation
Foundation
inspection for
inspection.
construction
Yeah, they make sure that
purposes.
it's 7 feet if it's so many square feet, it's 6 feet if it's so many. So what they're doing is they want a drawing that's showing it, that it's surveyed, that's where it is. So they'll know they got a 25-foot servitude and that's all the room they got in there. They're
Okay.
not gonna have 1 inch more, right? Essentially, that's what you want.
That's it.
And it's not very costly,
So essentially.
although
that-
everything's costly.
That cost goes on the
The
builder.
yeah, the owner of the building the house, it
Which
all
again,
goes
the
to the
builder's
purchaser of the
package is
house.
not-
Ultimately, the person buying the house. is
Pays for all of it.
But they're
Yeah,
paying for
absolutely.
most of that anyway to start off with.
They pay for all of it.
Yeah,
You pay
okay.
for all of it.
So you want the drawing,
So do you think there's any changes that need to be here now that you took care of 2 and C2 and
I mean,
we can always put this in place, and if Shane wants to say something.
I know,
Mr. Chairman, but we can always put this in place, and
Go
if
ahead,
it
Shane.
turns into a major issue, we can amend this. If there's necessary, I don't think there would be.
I think that we got, let's change, I mean, I'm not chairman,
right,
but
go
I
ahead.
know shit, but we got somebody that represents realtors, okay. Okay,
It's probably good, that's a good thing.
go ahead, Mr. Mack.
Yeah.
Shane Mack, Albany, Louisiana. I just had a couple of things to say, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's just the truth about how I feel about it. Okay, so we're getting into this habit here recently of writing ordinances specific to a gravity drainage district area. To me, that's going to be, to me, hard to regulate on a parish level. I think that we should get back to writing ordinances that are, I guess you would say, regulated, and they're parish-wide ordinances. If they're good ordinance for the whole parish, then that's the way we are to, I guess you could say, develop Livingston Parish. Okay, so that's just my thought on that. I can be wrong about that, but I mean, we're going to eventually have gravity drainage districts all over Livingston Parish, and I think that we can write this in such a way that it benefits the entire parish. I know out in my area, just because we don't have a funded gravity drainage district, I mean, it's not a good idea to put permanent structures, slabs, houses, these types of things in a drainage servitude. I mean, you know as well as I know, you put a little dirt in the middle of a natural drain, and we got major problems. And then once it's built and constructed, there's too much loss, financial loss for the property owner, to go in there and try to remove that. And that's probably
That's
running
why
into
we're-
some problems.
that's what I
So
think, why
I'm
we're
not
doing this
saying that
now.
maybe something should be done. I'm just saying that maybe we should take another look. And I mean, we're getting in a real bad habit, in my opinion, of writing ordinances specific to a small area of Livingston Parish, and we need to look at it as a whole.
Well, look-
The other thing I want to say is, when you're thinking about writing it as a whole, and somebody has a half-acre lot or something like that, or a lot in a subdivision and that type of stuff, I'm not as familiar with the I guess you could say permitting and building inspections and all that kind of stuff as y'all are. But my thought is they do submit some type of preliminary plot, right? And like you said, they form up the slab and they get it all ready for the concrete and everything, and then the building inspector from Livingston Parish goes out there and they inspect it, and they give it the okay to pour, or they don't. To me, that's the time for that individual, that inspector. He's got the knowledge, he works for the parish permit office, who to me should be regulating this in some way, shape, or form, to give the thumbs up if it's okay to pour the slab in this area or not, and they should be kind of familiar with where the servitudes are such that it can't be poured. I'm not saying it needs to be a engineered, documented $3,000 or $5,000 survey, if the property's already been surveyed, but I do think that you can go out there and maybe take a measuring tape, and see where the property line is, and make sure that the house slab or build or shed or something to that effect is not in that area. I think that, we're running into problems in Livingston Parish because, we're getting better. There's no doubt, we're getting better at this, developing Livingston Parish and having ordinances and regulations such that we don't mess up in the future. But I think probably in the past, maybe we didn't do a good job, the building inspector, of identifying where that slab was being poured and making sure it wasn't in that drainage servitude. And now we're in a jam, we've got things in drainage servitudes, and, it's not a good thing, So I do think in some way, shape, or form, we should talk about and work on as a group that any division of property should have dedicated drainage servitudes. And what comes to my mind is specifically is the minor resubs, right? You have a all-purpose drainage servitude or all-purpose servitude. Well, to me, that should be maybe more about access to the property. The access to the property may not always be where the natural drain should be. It may not. It just depends on the whole layout and contour of the area, right? So, to me, in some way, shape, or form, we should take a look at that and make sure that we're not, building things in areas, drainage servitudes, dedicated drainage servitudes, and that type of thing, such that, we don't have no way to clean that out in the future. So, I just kind of wanted to say that. Another thing that, to me, that, it's a pet peeve of mine. I'm gonna go ahead and say it, and there may be a legitimate reason why, and it may be because it's already there. But this ordinance specifically says that it excludes commercial structures. Well, I haven't quite understood why yet. Why would you exclude commercial structures?
Because there's more done up front.
Your rules for commercial development are different for subdivision versus what you would put in for commercial development.
They got
Dollar General store.
bigger setbacks, different things.
Things along those lines. So those rules don't necessarily apply in the drainage district. Normally in a commercial development, a larger development, such as you crossing or a Bass Pro development or something along those lines, those are going to be master plan developments where they have their own drainage impact study associated with everything being done on the site. So you wouldn't want to interfere with those.
So I guess I need to go back, but just a couple of things. My thought is do we have a current way that the building inspector knows when he goes out there to inspect, to identify if it's in a servitude that it shouldn't be anymore? Like
It's a
with the
guess.
preliminary plat map or something?
It's a guess.
I think,
You know what I mean?
Shane, to address some of your questions, I don't disagree with you on the gravity one versus parish-wide respect to these ordinances. So I think in doing that, that's kind of why, I was putting forth the things I talked about. I'm just saying that if we're gonna include permitting in this process, that this ordinance, as it exists right now, should probably be deferred to the next committee meeting of the ordinance committee, and we need to invite permitting to come make comments. And Lauren should probably forward this to DD and the administration tomorrow for them to look at the ordinance and see how it might apply to them, so they can have some idea. Because I'm just gonna tell you, when we addressed the setback in that round table with permitting and planning and developers, the one thing permitting didn't want to be involved in the inspection process was the slab with respect to the property line. They wanted the developer to be responsible that thing was outside the setback. They don't want to be part of that inspection process because those property lines are not readily identifiable. Because they were at one point in time, but you and I both know, you go in a subdivision after they started building houses and cutting a little grass, and you can't find.
Yeah, but usually now, when they get ready to set the farm, they pull a line
Well, I
on the
mean-
property line so they can measure 7 feet.
But I'm just telling you that permitting doesn't want to be responsible for saying that the string was here when I measured. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? And then
they
when the-
didn't want to, but they're doing it.
Well, I mean,
They're checking it.
I mean, I'm just saying that we need to, I think that the best thing with this particular deal is to.
Yeah,
is to
get everybody on
is to
board. That's
defer
not a
it
big
2
deal.
weeks and
I
bring
just want to say I
permitting
100%
in,
agree with that. It's a very wise decision.
bring permitting into discussion.
We just talked about that
Only
earlier.
based on previous
Trying to get on your
ordinances
bases,
we
you can
addressed
make the
and
right
required there.
If everybody gets on the same page, we'll figure out where we want to place it, who's going to be doing,
But
whether we
And
want
to
to
be
go
clear, this
parish
is
wide.
just for in gravity one.
Well, I mean, it's
It is,
it's
but they
written
still
gravity.
have to deal with it if it goes through permitting.
Well, sure.
But the issue is this is not, this issue that exists in gravity 5.
Oh, no, without a
And
doubt.
it exists in gravity 2.
I guess I'll bring that up to say that it's not an issue that would affect Mr. Mack's district at all. And in gravity one, for better or worse, could be, it can be the guinea pig on it.
Well,
It works out fine. and-
the interesting thing is what exists in gravity 1 is the parish can pass this ordinance all we want. There is a large part of that resides inside the city limits of Dennis Springs
Sure.
that this ordinance won't affect.
Won't
And
affect at all.
And if we apply this ordinance parish-wide, there's a large part of gravity 5 that resides in the city of
Correct.
Walker
But,
that.
but
necessarily-
doesn't what Gravity One pass,
It's not automatically.
but they almost always adopt what Gravity One wants in the city.
I'm not gonna speak for the city.
But they have
But-
accepted
but-
some of
but-
the ordinances
they
and said, we want to put this in
I'm with
place.
you.
I-
But I
Yeah.
also understand what he's
I
saying
don't, and I
too.
don't disagree with Shane's, I don't disagree with
either.
Shane's, respect to the, ultimate deal that, Gravity One's got the problem and gravity, but it's not a problem that doesn't exist within
Oh,
other
and
gravity.
I
agencies.
absolutely
So-
agree.
So we probably ought to be more diligent about what we're doing and so that we have this ordinance that could actually
Well,
work.
we can
parish-wide.
always expand it, just
All
as,
right, did
you
you
know.
have any, did you?
No, he's-
all right, You got a motion to defer?
I think we can defer it to 2 weeks or just revisit it in 2 weeks and be sure
And
that we
invite-
reach out to permitting, and at the same time, we probably ought to reach out to ask Dee Dee to reach out to some of her builders that it might be impacted and have them come make comment also,
Yeah, she called me this morning and I sent her this and I have not talked to her since.
Yeah,
And
see,
then
so
there's
that-
a few wording things that just at the council level and writing ordinances and stuff, that needs to be looked at, like the name subdivision thing, like that, we've written that into a lot of ordinances, it's given us a lot of problems. And then in B, it says, all developments approved or constructed before this date are exempt from this ordinance. It's not typically something that we put in ordinances for, like, people.
Well, and
Like, we can grandfather stuff in, but you don't, I've just always been told, you don't really want to exempt something from an ordinance because you can't.
Well, and in this case, I don't think you should, in this particular
I'm
case.
just
Because
saying-
if you have a named subdivision with a piece of property on it
And
that
it
hasn't been
hasn't
developed, then they need to
I
abide.
mean, ultimately, if
Yeah.
the permit on the house hadn't been pulled by
Yeah,
a
they
date,
should
date,
apply.
They should be
then the
required.
ordinance should
That's
have.
just-
Yeah, so look.
Oh, I
look at
understand.
that.
Anyway.
State this ordinance, so that would be something that, like, I would just be emailing you about and it just.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I'll second.
You got anything else?
No, no.
Defer,
All
second.
right, motion to defer by Mr. Talbot, you?
Only one thing I'd
Go
like
ahead.
to say is, I'm for this, because where is the major part of the development taking place at this time?
It's in Gravity One.
Do what?
Gravity One,
Gravity 1, District 5,
yeah, and 2.
and 2. You're right.
And the other ones will probably want to do something similar. And
Yeah.
that's why Shane said we probably need to do this parish-wide. But who said guinea pig group 1?
Me.
I mean, it's effectively, that would be a good test case to see if it turns into an issue, if we need to work on
I
it
mean,
before we do it and then pass
It's
it.
clearly been a problem in the past.
Oh,
If it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it.
We got
now.
way more problems.
All right,
Yeah.
motion to defer, second by Mr. King, motion by Mr. Talbot. All in favor? All right, good. Item B, discussion of proposed section, chapter 125, drainage easement requirements.
So may I recommend that we do the same thing we did for this, I guess, the first one?
Okay.
And go meet with Dee Dee, sit down and ask them some questions?
This actually isn't the DDD. I think this is something that's gonna be addressed at the planning department.
Okay.
In review, this is something Morgan's gonna do, and if you think about it, we've talked to her
About
over and
this
over about this
several
before.
times, yeah.
And we know this is something that needs to be done, we've looked for guidance. I think that there needs to be some work on some of the wording, but this is something that could easily be, we could defer it 2 weeks, we could work on some wording, we could send it to Morgan and Sam and them in planning and let them make some comment. But this is definitely, we know that there are problems. We know that we end up with 36-inch culverts and typical drainage servitudes between houses with there being absolutely no way in the world to go ever address that. The only way to fix it is the slip line, which can be.
If they put the house in the right place.
Well, I mean.
Or the pipe in the middle of the
which prompted
servitude.
Which could
Yeah.
be ultimately expensive. So this is something that definitely needs to happen.
Yep.
And I don't think this is doesn't need to be a gravity one thing. This just needs to be a
All over.
parish-wide subdivision
Yeah.
design issue,
I agree with
period. But I think this thing needs to be diverted, just sent to Morgan and let her do some review on it
And then she
and
could
then-
come in 2 weeks
and
maybe.
come in 2 weeks and then basically look at how we're gonna, how we bring these dimensions into our current subdivision ordinance. And I think that solves that issue. But this is something that we've talked about probably for 3 years now.
Yep.
And so this actually gives us, if culvert's this wide and the only question that I have is I'm not sure sometimes we need to end up with, as Shane talked about, is dedicated drainage servitudes on subsurface. You know what I'm talking about? Ultimately, we end up with,
Where it's fee title?
no, I think the servitude needs to be related strictly to drainage and cable and gas and water and everywhere else needs to be in
Currently,
there.
your ordinance says that nothing can be in the drainage servitude.
Okay,
And it's
well-
something we're fighting right now. still.
But I mean, I'm just telling,
They don't always do it.
because some of these subdivisions with the drainage on curb and gutter, subsurface on curb and gutter, you end up with, they need a distance to work on this stuff, but the servitude's only so wide and you run a fiber optics line or something in there and you start figuring out where this stuff stacks. And so this might be something we need to go back and visit. Do we need to dedicate the first distance of the servitude needs for this, and then we start laying out, where everybody has their servitude within the deal. But I don't want to muddy the water on this particular
Yeah, 'cause
item
this
with
has
that.
been needing to be done.
But we probably
Make sure it's right.
probably need to look at
If you look
stacking the
back
servitude.
now, At these problems that we're having, this was done years ago. South Point's a prime example. All curb and gutter in there, and whenever they have a fault in the asphalt, That's where the drainage line is. They have to go dig up everything and start over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that issue in one of my neighborhoods.
Yeah, so-
It wasn't that bad, but it was.
So, yeah, we'll,
Where it shouldn't be.
you gonna
so that.
make a motion?
I think we
Yeah,
need to.
motion to defer?
Defer and then, and just reach out to Morgan for review
Yeah.
and send it to planning for review. And then talk about it in 2 weeks and invite her to come, you know, to make comments. Even if she doesn't want to come make comments, she can make written comments,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
with
fine.
respect to what she wants to do, however they want to handle it.
There's a motion by you, second from Mr. Harris. All in favor, say aye. All right. Item 3 is old business, review, discussion, and recommendations of ordinances, and it's discussion of proposed section 125-33, placement of fill from gravity drainage District 1. And I'm assuming this is, y'all wanted to defer this one, correct?
This item, as I understand, it's gonna be deferred Thursday night. We're gonna tell people we're gonna defer it. We're gonna open the public hearing because it's advertised. We have no choice. This thing is gonna be revisited. My understanding, there's gonna be public hearings. There's gonna be some roundtables with developers and contractors on this thing. And then the ordinance is gonna be redrafted, resubmitted, and a new public hearing will be set forth. So anything we talk about at this point in time would just be kind of a wasteful deal.
Yeah,
Because
it's
it's
gonna
It's gonna be
It's
changed.
gonna be changed.
I agree. All right. So really, we need to defer this.
No, this thing's just, it's basically a dead issue as it
Yeah.
exists. As it is
Okay.
currently written, the concept is not dead. I think the way this particular ordinance is written is gonna be revisited.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll do that. Motion to table as it's currently
Yeah,
written.
just motion to table this discussion.
All right, second?
Yeah.
All right.
Uh,
Yeah, all in favor, say aye. Okay. Anything else?
I think we're good right now.
You good? All right, motion to adjourn.
I hope that is.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. King. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Adjourn.
Go home.